So, the question that I have for you this morning is, what is worship? And I think it's a little apropos, I think that's the right word, that this is coming in a moment when our worship was unintentionally stripped down to just a piano and two vocalists today, which you did a beautiful job wherever you guys went. Thank you very much for that. So what is worship? Worship is an important part of our lives as Christians, and we do it all the time, or at least we claim to. When I ask that question, you might say worship is the songs that we sing in church, or maybe it's the entire service that we do. You might say it's the songs that you sing in your car, and you might even say that worship is when we are gathered together as believers, or when you're working, or when you're reading your Bible. But if I polled everyone in this room, and I asked them, what is worship? I guarantee you we'd get some wildly varying answers or some wildly rigid answers. Answers to the question, what is worship? So I just finished a series with our students on a theology of worship. And one of the problems that I set up for us is with the Western church, the American church, overall, kind of struggles with the worship. Part of its struggle is that worship means different things to different people. Some churches swing away from their rigid Baptist ancestors, and they try to make it an energetic and engaging worship service. But then those traditional churches look at those modern churches and see the lights and the smoke machines and the Instagram-worthy worship directors, and they kind of recoil a bit. We, all of the churches in the West, we don't do a good job at defining it. And instead, we get so caught up in the execution of it. We get so caught up in the things that we're doing of it, and we forget to even figure out what the word means. When we fail to define a word correctly, so much other stuff comes in and muddies it up. You see, English is a terrible language, or at least I'm told it's the only one that I speak. Other languages have single words for an expression that takes English entire sentences to explain. In Japanese, there's this word called komorebi. Again, I only speak English, so we're going to struggle with a lot of pronunciations today. Komorebi is this word that's used for the way the light leaks through the trees on the forest floor. But even that is an oversimplification of the word. It invokes the feeling that it produces, the tranquility, the awe, and English can't translate it correctly. We'd probably be walking through the trees and say something like, wow, that light is really cool. English, as we use it, it's short, it's unpoetic, it's concise, and it's literal compared to other languages. So let's come back to this question that I keep asking. What is worship? The word worship, it's fallen victim to this oversimplification that English is prone to. When I ask, what is worship, most Christians would first point to the songs that we sing on Sunday morning. And then they might add those songs that we're singing in the car. But why? Why do we do it? Is it just about singing songs? Could we read them instead? I know a lot of people that would be like, I would much appreciate that. What level of effort is involved? Or even required, for that matter? So, our church is very restrained when it comes to worship. Not trying to make a commentary or anything, I'm just observing, okay? I'm just trying to make a factual observation. We're very respectful of God. That's awesome. There are a lot of churches that aren't very respectful of God when they're in worship. So, A+ for that one. But that's where our expression kind of ends. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure you guys have heard this joke before, but we've got some TV holders, okay? We've got some My Fish Is This Big. My personal favorite is just that we've got the heartburn. Just loving God right here with my heart. We've got a couple, TV gets a little bigger that you need to like group carry, but we have very few like goalpost raisers, okay? But that's pretty much all that we have. And I see videos of other churches dancing and shouting for joy, and other people do that whole slain by the Spirit thing, which I'm not going to comment on. But other churches have the production level of a headlining musical act. Are we missing something? Or are they the ones that have it wrong? All that to say, we've let our definition of worship fall into a rut. We do the same things over and over again. We've let a word that's supposed to be beautiful and complex become boring and rigid. Instead of defining the light in the trees, we're looking at worship and saying, wow, that's really cool. And maybe it's not our fault, though. Maybe our translations that we have in our hands play a little bit of a factor into it. So, if you guys don't know about Bible translation, it's a hard job. The Bible wasn't written in English. Surprise! We're not the most important culture to ever exist in the history of humanity. And that job is really hard. And I could give you an entire lesson on Bible translation. But when presented with words, Bible translators don't have a definite equivalent in English. They've got to make a choice to change it. The words they translate into worship aren't wrong, but maybe they're not the best. So, did you guys know that in the Old Testament, hang on, what language was the Old Testament written in? I can do a little better than that. What language was the Old Testament written in? Awesome, thank you very much. In the Hebrew Old Testament, there are 7 different words that we translate into either worship or praise. And let's be real, we think worship and praise are synonymous anyways. 7 different words, 7 different meanings, 7 different nuanced usages. And we just kind of make them one thing. So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be trying to help us get back to a profound understanding of what worship of our holy God is. We're going to be looking at these different Hebrew words so that we can take our definition of worship from, wow, that light is really cool, to komorebi. And this journey is going to be rough for a lot of us. There's going to be literal shouting. There's going to be raising of hands. There might be laying on the floor if you're able to. But on the other side of this is a form of worship that is beautiful and robust. How does that sound? And everybody groaned in agony. All right, so let's dive in. So we're going to be looking at 2 Hebrew words today. And like I said, these words are used in our Old Testament and are translated into either worship or praise, which we both kind of think are the same thing. So the first word that we're looking at is Zamar. I'm going to roll that R once, and then I'm going to leave it because it's tiring. I tried it. So it's Zamar. Zamar is a pretty simple word. This word typically gets translated to praise, and this word is used 45 times in 41 different verses in the Old Testament. 37 of those verses are just in Psalms. So it means to make music, to play an instrument, or to sing. Quite literally, it can mean to touch the strings or parts of an instrument. So let's take a look at how this is used in Psalm 144. I will sing a new song to you, O God. Upon a harp of 10 strings, I will sing praises to you. So let's look how this verse breaks down. We see sing and we see praise here. So immediately we think we're talking about worship. Good start. But notice the words that we translate very similarly here. I will sing gets translated to shir, a new song to you, O God. Upon a harp of 10 strings, I will sing praises, Zamar, to you. I will sing is translated from one word, shir. This word, it's just the act of singing. To sing a song, any song. But I will sing praises is translated from Zamar. So right there, something's different. If the original author was just saying, I will sing praises to you, then he probably would have just used the same word again. So, what's the difference? In all iterations of Zamar, It's specifically in the context of music that was played to or for God to glorify him. So let's pause on the Hebrew for a second and let's talk for a minute about music. Music's important. Music changes moods. It alters lives. And we've kind of lost this idea because everything plays music now. Like my phone plays music, my car plays music, my fridge plays music, my toaster plays music while giving the government access to a microphone to spy on me, and my little robot vacuum gives them an entire map of my house. Music is kind of just background to us now. But when those things got music, that was really cool. I remember to this day the first time that I was able to carry music around with me. It was in middle school. I got this little CD player that blew and bubbles on it, and you could see the CD, and sitting on a bus going to and from school, you had to hold it flat because the CD would kind of get off angle, and if you hit a speed bump too hard, it would scratch the CD, and then it would skip, so you had to be very careful with it. Being able to listen to bands like Fall Out Boy and Switchfoot brought so much joy to me. And I remember trading CDs with other kids on the bus. Like, Switchfoot technically was my first introduction to anything that could have been labeled Christian music, and I didn't even know it to 10 years later because we were trading music, but because it was fun and it was cool. It was emotionally involved. Music creates a culture and it brings people together. My friends and I, we would have bad days at school, and we would sit 4 or 5 people to one of those little, really, they say 3, 2 people. Why did they have a third seatbelt on it? Do they still do that? School buses, they have 3, they used to have 3 seatbelts on clearly what was for 2 people. But you'd squeeze together, and you'd put headphone splitters in, and you'd be listening to music because you were trying to decompress from the bad day at school that you were having before you got home. It created a culture. It brought people together. It was emotionally involved. Let me look at this from another angle. Does anybody like musical theater? We are clearly not a musical theater group in this room. So this one's going to hurt for you guys a little bit. So I used to love musical theater. I was sure I was going to be a Broadway star before I became a Christian. And I went to performing arts high school in New York City that did musical theater and all this stuff. One of the fundamental things that you're taught when you're studying musical theater is that characters break out into song for a reason. It's a little different with modern musicals now because they're a little more artsy. But as an actor in a musical, you have to find a reason to break out into song. Because if I was just having a conversation with you and I just broke out into song, it'd be weird. It'd be a little weird. It's weird, right? So the justification that they find in that is that their emotions are so much that there's no other choice. That crying isn't enough, screaming isn't enough, but breaking out into song is a release of that emotion. Singing in musicals is the best option. Music carries emotions in it in a way that words alone just can't. Music softens our hearts. It soothes us. It can rile us up. Music is a powerful tool of human emotion. And that is what Zamar is tapping into. Shir is a basic action, singing. Zamar is an emotional involvement. Zamar uses the music as a conduit of all that emotion that we're carrying, and it directs it towards God. We're fighting a Komorebi and light through the trees moment here. We might say simplistically that it means to play music for God, but what does that mean? What does it mean to play music for God? It's using music to allow yourself to become emotionally vulnerable, to drop your guard. Musicians, it's playing your instrument in God's glory because he created you to be a musician, not just to make it sound good. Singers, it's making new music and maybe going a little bit off script because you're moved by God and what he is doing in you in that moment. Non-singers, it means being free enough to drop the shame of getting it wrong. Zamar takes that act of playing music and offers it up to God to praise who he wonderfully is. So why should we use Zamar in worship? There are many ways to worship God. Music it's not the only one. But Zamar prepares our hearts to hear from God. Zamar prepares our hearts to hear from God. Like I said, music is a powerful thing. When used correctly, Zamar helps us to leave the world and our troubles at the door. Zamar to start our service helps us to logically and emotionally remember that our God is all-powerful, never fails, and has forgiven us completely if we've placed our faith in Jesus. In return of the praise that we lift to God, Zamar does something to us as well. So we give Zamar to God to worship him, and it also has a profound impact on us as individuals. Music penetrates hardened hearts. It excites us like good music does. Just like a good hype song gets you ready to do that really hard thing. Does anybody have a good hype song that like whenever they're like, I just got to do this, just play this song? Mine is a really weird version of All-Star by Smash Mouth. It's a fun like EDM mix. Holly's, my wife, Crocodile Rock. See, I did that at first, but you know what? After 3 or 4 years of listening to it on repeat, it's a good song. I think it's there as well. Using music as a hype song for our faith fills us with the courage to live out our faith in a world that wants nothing to do with God. So let me give you a good example of Zamar. Again, I speak English, I'm sorry. So we just sang Firm Foundation. Standing here and singing that song should be a rallying cry to us. This song bases itself off Matthew 7:24 to 25. Therefore, everyone who hears the words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain fell, the rivers rose, and the winds blew and pounded that house. Yet it didn't collapse because its foundation was on the rock. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. When everything around me is shaken, I've never been more glad because I've put my faith in Jesus, and he will never let me down. Amen? He is the firm foundation that we've built our lives on. And when the bad times come, my house will still be standing. The rain came, the wind blew. My house was built on you. I'm safe with you, and I'm going to make it through. Many of us in the Big C church have taken Zamar out of our definition of worship. We sing literally, and we leave our emotions at the door when we come in. We show up, we sing a song, we sit down, we put our money in a basket, we stand up, we sing a song, we sit down, we listen to someone preach, we stand up, we sing one more song, and then we leave. We participate in cheer, but we leave Zamar at the door. Let me challenge all of us. Zamar at the door. Us today. Let the music move you. Be emotionally invested. Let it shape you and change you. You're allowed to be fired up during worship. You're allowed to shout. You're allowed to raise hands. You're allowed to cry. That's what it means to use Zamar in worship. All right. One word of worship. So with Zamar, we looked more at the aspect of playing music, but being emotionally involved in the process. Our second word of worship helps us to look at the lyrics a little bit more than we're used to. Our second word today is Tehillah. A Tehillah is a song of praise or a spontaneous song, but most prominently, it's a hymn. In fact, it's the root word of the Hebrew name for the book of Psalms, Tehillah. So Tehillah is the word that we're looking at today, and that's the root word for the book of Psalms, Tehillah. This word, it's used 57 times, and over half of those occurrences happen in the book of Psalms. Great guess. Good job. A psalm, or a Tehillah, is a praise song. And for us, a psalm has a very specific meaning. It's the verses that come out of the book of Psalms. Or a hymn is a very reformed, liturgical, proper song, usually involves an organ giving glory to God. But we don't write new hymns, do we? They're being abandoned to dusty hymnals sitting in the basements of churches they were once used in. And I mean, yeah, there are some bands that are trying to modernize hymns, but a little bit of a look behind the curtain, when they start adding choruses into a hymn, it becomes their song and they can get paid for it. But that's what they're meant to mean. Let's look at how the word is used. So we've got two verses that we're looking at in Psalm 22:3 and Psalm 78:4. So Psalm 22:3 says, "Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises," or Tehillah, of Israel. And then Psalm 78:4 says, "We will not hide them from their children, but will tell a future generation of the praiseworthy," Tehillah, "acts of the Lord, his might, and the wondrous works he has performed." So we've got this thing, the Tehillah, that's being established. It's a noun. God is enthroned on the Tehillah of Israel. God is worthy of that Tehillah. Tehillah, we're going to see how many more times I can say it, or what we would now call hymns and psalms. They're songs of adoration or thanksgiving. They enshrine the glory of God into songs, and then we repeat them until we all know them. These Tehillah, or hymns, they're sung together so that the glory of God is told. When the psalmist in Psalm 22 uses the word, he's not just describing a single song. He's showing this idea that these songs are sung by the Jewish people together to create a culture, a following. They're deep and they're meaningful. And God is anchored or enthroned or set upon these Tehillah. These hymns or psalms, they tell of God's great deeds. They're written by people who have experienced God and his goodness and pour out those stories to glorify God by telling the story to those around them in song. Tehillah are songs that don't come from just knowledge of God, but they flow from intimacy with God. They're personal. They're rich. They tell a story. The craft of storytelling it's not big in our information-based culture. With technology at our fingertips, we don't need a long expository set of information. We just want the 10 seconds. Give me the summary. Fit it in a TikTok or an Instagram reel. But we can see the meaning of storytelling in our history of humanity. Before things could be written down, before you could buy a pen and paper with what you have in your pocket, only the wealthy could afford to write things down. We couldn't just keep anything as information, and humanity used storytelling to convey that information instead. This idea of gathering around a campfire and telling a story, it used to be a part of the human experience. And a lot of times, humanity has told stories through songs. Songs having pure entertainment and massive repetition. It's more of a modern idea in the history of music, but all music teaches you a story. All music, whether you realize it or not, is teaching you something. And Tehillah uses music to teach a story about God. Does everybody know what a mantra is? Anybody? Okay. So, Star Wars Day, happy May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Okay. Does anybody remember, I think it was Rogue One a couple years ago? Did anybody see that movie? So, there's a guy in this movie, he's a monk, and he's not a Jedi, but he is a monk of the Jedi Order, and he keeps repeating this phrase over and over again. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. A mantra, it's a word or a sound or a phrase that you repeat over and over and over again. It's mostly used by monks, and it's something that you repeat so that way you focus on it. To block everything else out and focus on that one thing. Repeating the mantra over and over again, it changes the way your mind functions, and eventually that thing that you're saying over and over and over again becomes a part of you. Just this simple act of repeating a word or a phrase, it changes us. It literally changes who you are, what's important to you. These words we repeat over and over again, it's the stories that we tell over and over again. It changes us. Tehillah taps into this idea. This collection of psalms isn't meant to be read like a book, which we kind of do now. Tehillah they're stories. They're meant to be sung over and over again until it's in the fabric of our being. Just like mantras, hymns and psalms, they force us to sing over and over again strong theology about who God is, what God has done, and anchor that into our souls so that when we go through hard times, these words are at the forefront of our lives. When we repeat these over and over so that way we remember them, when times get tough, those are the words you're saying to yourself. Phil Wickham's Hymn of Heaven encapsulates this so beautifully. The second verse goes, if you don't know it, every prayer we prayed in desperation. The songs of faith we sang through doubt and fear. In the end, we'll see that it was worth it when he comes to wipe away our tears. Tehillah, at its core, is songs that glorify God, sung from deep within our hearts, out of personal experience with him. These songs, they're then sung by all of us in order to anchor God in our lives, not just on a Sunday morning, and remember what he has done to prepare us for what he'll do. So why should we use it? Why should we use Tehillah in worship? Because it teaches us to trust our heart. It teaches our heart to trust God even when our minds don't. Don't trust your own heart. If there's one thing that you take from me today, don't trust your own heart. It's completely counter to what all we're doing here. Tehillah teaches our heart to trust God even when our minds don't. Why isn't singing songs about God good enough? Why do we need to go one step further? Well, unfortunately, it's because sermons aren't good enough. Joe, I'm not saying that your sermons suck, okay? In fact, I've had more people come to me and say that they've stayed at this church because of your sermons than I've experienced at any other church, so good job. But sometimes sermons alone are not enough to train us and equip us to follow Christ. Compared to the history of Christianity, sermons are still newer. And this isn't what the early church was meant to do. Early church gatherings weren't monologues, but they were discussions. They were back and forths. It was multiple people coming forward and sharing a word, and then they would break out into song and do this whole dance together. And society has changed. That's not what we do now. That's okay. This isn't the original church did this, so we should be, we can pause. But it's not always the best way of conveying information. Anybody who has taken a lecture in college knows that. I don't remember anything from any of my lectures in college. I remember sleeping. I remember the backs of my eyelids, because it was a little more appropriate to do there. But teaching the Bible in a lecture format, it's difficult. The exact numbers are debatable, but the general idea goes like this. So you retain about 90% of what you teach to somebody else, 75%-ish about what you practice, 50-ish% of what you discuss in a group, 30% of what you see demonstrated, and 10% of what you just hear. So glad all of you will walk out of here and remember exactly what I said today. Tehillah helps us to get out of that 10% into something a little more substantial. It helps us to actually retain something from sermons when we're actually engaging and participating in. And that's what we can do with Tehillah. We need songs that we sing over and over and over again that are tied to our lives and our relationships with God, to actually remember the things that we're being taught. You don't have to say this out loud, but do you guys remember what Joe talked about 2 weeks ago? I'm sure you got great notes. Okay, that's why notes are really good. We get away from that 10%. But I could take the lyrics off the screen on half of the songs that we do and we could make it through, right? Because we remember those. We're involved, we're singing, we're participating. And that's why Tehillah is so important to us. So, back in December, my wife really wanted to start singing songs with our son when she put him to bed. And she wanted to start teaching him to love and obey the Lord while he was still under 2. She wanted him to grow up with these songs burned into his memory. But when she went to sing, no songs came to mind. She couldn't remember what songs our church sings. So I did some digging, and the reason she couldn't remember the songs that we sing together as a church is because we didn't have any. In the 6 months up until that point, we had repeated songs 6 times. Not 6 songs, 6 times. We need our own Tehillah, our own book of Psalms that we just know. And that's what's happening right now. We need to make our own Tehillah. So you may have noticed that we're starting to do songs over and over again. And you may have noticed that some of the songs that we sang last week, we're still singing again this week. And that's not because we're lazy, which I would much rather take the lazier option, don't get me wrong. But it's intentional. We need to create this collection of songs that we have together, that we sing together, that our children are raised on. I mean, how many of the songs that you guys grew up in the church still know? What's the one that we were just, Rob, what's the one that we were just singing? I didn't grow up in the church this morning with the rains came down and the floods came up. Those are great. Those are awesome. When I started as a Christian, I thought they were the stupidest thing. I'm sorry. Struck down. But now having a kid, hearing those songs from VBS and Sunday mornings that are just ingrained in our memory, that just like get unlocked when we start reading the things that come out of, that's so good for us because it's words that we can literally remember about who God is. We don't have to search for the words. They come like breathing, so we can breathe out our praise to a great and holy God. I hope you feel healthily challenged today. Worship, it's integral in our relationship with God, in our experience as Christians. But we don't really do a good job at defining it. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be challenging all of us to look deeper at worship. If anybody was looking at me during worship, my hands were not, but I'm saying that's the direction we're going to move in. So it's going to be a challenge for all of us. Today was the easy ones, just the lyrics and the heart posture. Thankfully, Joe gets to actually put a little pressure on you guys, and I don't have to take those glaring eyes from up here. So get ready. But as we close today, let's think about how we can incorporate Zamar, being emotionally involved, and Tehillah, this collection of songs that flows from our hearts as we worship our holy God. Amen? All right. I guess it's not really a band. As Zach and Bethany come back up. You're a great band. Yeah. So as they come back up, and you can go ahead and move the TV, and this is a little less important, but we're closing our service with 2 songs today. And these songs were chosen intentionally. Good, Good Father, which we're going to be singing, it's simple, and it's repetitive, and it's gotten a lot of insults thrown at it since it came about a few years ago. But it forces us to verbalize our relationship with God. I've heard 1,000 stories of what they say you're like, but I've experienced it. I know who you are. God, you know who you are? You're a good father. A good father. And I'm loved by you. Let's sing those songs today, church, those words. Tell yourself that you are loved by him. No matter where you are, no matter what you're going through, no matter how dark the season looks, you are loved by God. Let's pray.